Good evening, everyone. I'm Steve Seepersod coming to you from the campus of Binghamton University. It is great to have you with us for our spring 2024 Tier Talks, talks that inspire, educate, and resonate. I promise that tonight's program will do all of those things, and we're so glad that you are here with us for the program titled Red, White, Blue, and Gray: Opportunities and Challenges of an Aging America. This is part of our lifelong learning initiatives that we have here at Binghamton University. I'm going to go through two very, very quick commercials and then bring up a very, very special guest to talk more about what we have going on as far as lifelong learning programs. We have an alumni travel program. This is something that we are very excited to relaunch at the start of this year, with 3 great trips planned for 2024 of the Southwest National Parks happening later on this month. You can discover Southeast Alaska in August of this year, and we close it out with a trip to Northern Italy in October. So that is going to be some fun for whoever signs up. You can find out more on our website, binghamton.edu/alumni, binghamton.edu/alumni, and right there on the homepage is a quick link to the Alumni Travel Program webpage. You can learn more and sign up for one or more of these great excursions. And also another quick commercial for our podcast series. We've got a couple of episodes uploaded already and working on some more great content to add to this series here on Spotify. So go to Spotify, search Binghamton Alumni Podcast, and you can check out this great content, short interviews that feature alumni doing cool things. And it's great for, hey, I've got to drive across town and go to the supermarket, get my kid to a game or something like that, or go pick them up from a game. And it's 15 minutes or so of an interview, and the guests are very interesting. And so check that out when you can. So let's bring up the first very special person that we'd like to have talk to you, Dana West from the class of 1997. He is the chair of the Alumni Association's Lifelong Learning Committee, and here to tell us more about some programs that are available for you. Dana, thank you so much. It's great to have you with us.
Great, Steve. Thanks for having me. It's 98, by the way, but who's counting? But appreciate all that you do for Tier Talks and for the Alumni Association. My name again is Dana West. I'm on the board of directors of the Alumni Association, and I happen to be the chair of the Lifelong Learning Committee. So it's just something that is really a pleasure for us on the committee. And I'm sure I can speak for Steve that we just start with a blank piece of paper and we find a topic and we find some really terrific speakers. I'm just so excited to have this program here today. If you like this type of material, we really hope to see you in person for our flagship event at Homecoming every year. And we have some really special guests for this September. It's in September this year, folks, not October. So keep an eye on your calendars for that invitation, and hope to see everybody out there in person on that. A couple of other things that we work on, as Steve mentioned, this is our first relaunch of our travel program in 2024. So we have 3 varied locations for the travel program as part of our committee is put out this year. We really hope that grows in a substantial way over time. Tier Talks is another one of our projects, and we're really pleased to be able to put these things on. I think that, despite the pandemic having so many negative things, the fact that we started some of these webinars remotely and Tier Talks remotely, we've decided to carry those things on to be able to provide this to you wherever you are in the world, and to be able to enjoy these things from afar. So one other quick commercial: if you're in the Westchester area, keep an eye out for Westchester happenings. I also happen to be the leader of the Westchester chapter, so I have a couple hats on, and we'd love to see you out there and to be as involved as you'd like to be. So with that being said, I don't want to hold up some really great presenters. You're really going to be satisfied and excited to hear from Deb and Len. I'll let Steve do the introductions, but Steve, let me just hand it on back to you. And thanks again.
Dana, thank you so much. And I'm sorry that I goofed on the class year. I aged you up. If I had gone in the other direction, maybe that would have been not as bad. So yes, class of 98. Dana's a great member of the Alumni Association board. And we have a whole team of people that works together to put these programs on the air and to get the travel program together. So check all of that out. I'll put our website address up on the screen toward the end of the program, binghamton.edu/alumni. Pretty easy to remember. So check that out, of course, after the show. So before we bring in our first of the 2 alumni presenters to talk about the topic of aging, and so aging is something that we can't get away from it, sort of like taxes, we have to pay taxes, we get older, that has to happen. But it's not necessarily a bad thing. And so our presenters will talk about how this can be very positive when done in a purposeful way. And they're eager to take your questions. We want questions. We want this program to be interactive. And as I like to say, we want to do this program with you and not just do it for you. So start to send in your questions whenever you want. After both of our presenters have a turn, the remaining portion of the time of the program will be devoted to your questions. Add them in as a comment on Facebook if you're watching on Facebook. If you're watching on the microsite, you can add your questions there. And from time to time, I will put my email address up on the screen in a little banner graphic. And then when you see that, just go ahead and send me an email if you want. I'll be looking at all of these different sources and bring in the best of the questions for like the last 10 to 15 minutes or so of the program. Not a hard stop once we reach that hour of say 6:30 Eastern. We can keep this going a little bit longer if the energy and the questions keep it going. So start now with the questions if you would like. Now to bring in our first presenter, and let's say hello to Lenard Kaye from the class of 1972. And I have that on a piece of paper here, so I didn't mess it up like I did with Dana. He is a professor of social work and director of the Center on Aging at the University of Maine, a prolific writer and researcher in the fields of healthcare and aging. He can tell you much more about his background. We've seen enough of me for the start of this program. Len, thank you so much, and glad to have you with us.
Oh, thank you so much, Steve. I'm delighted to be here. I really am. At least virtually. It's great to return to my alma mater. I tell you, I hold a lot of fond memories of the time when Binghamton University was known as Harper College, a much smaller higher education institution in those years. I'm delighted also to see that Binghamton University is ranked number one as it should be in the New York State system of public education. I want to, before I move forward, applaud the planners of Tier Talks for recognizing the importance of considering the impact of an aging society. You are one of few who are willing to address that topic. Please know, by the end of this talk, I hope you'll appreciate the fact that not a single sector of society will remain unaffected by the aging of America. And that extends from family to community life, to retail, transportation, healthcare, housing and real estate, science and technology, construction, communication systems, the legal and insurance field, and I could go on and on. Every single sector of the economy will be impacted. So the compelling demographics are loud and clear. The United Nations pronounced that that any country that has 7% or more of its population 60 years of age or over is an aging society. Under that definition that the UN established, we've been aging as a society for decades. Believe it or not, 1 million people around the world turn 60 years of age every month. And in the United States, beginning in 2011, 10,000 people turn 65 every day. That's astounding. It's unprecedented. And it impacts, as I said, everything and anything we do. Here's what the current picture looks like. Older adults, those 65 and over, are growing 3 times faster than young people, namely those 14 years and under. We currently count those 65 and over in the tens of millions. 62 million folks like myself are 65 and over. That's now 18% of the U.S. population. By 2030, there'll be 70 million people more or more who are 65 plus. Now, while those 65 and over are the fastest growing, even faster growing are those in the 85 and over cohort. And faster than them are likely to be centenarians, those 100 years and over. If you've managed to survive and live and thrive to your 65th birthday, you can count on at least another 18 years on average. You will also, in the years ahead, see increasing diversity among the older adult population. 25% of older adults now are counted among racial minorities. That will increase to 40%, in some 25 years or so. Life expectancy currently is 73 years for men and 79 years for women. So you can see which gender are the survivors. Women continue to enjoy some 6 years more of life than men. And there are numerous reasons to explain that perhaps we can readdress a bit later on. But women get more life than men for a variety of reasons. The growth of centenarians, as I said, is astounding. In 1900, it was rare. It was rare to find or identify anyone who had lived to be 100 years of age. In 2024, we have 105,000 Americans who are centenarians, and that number will quadruple in 30 years in 2054. More importantly than that is the fact that 30% of them are living independently. Namely, they live in the community. They're not in nursing homes. They're not in specialized healthcare facilities. They're living independently, and they're what we call aging in place. Why? Because older adults are increasingly healthy and mobile and educated and financially stable. They're certainly more politically astute. You're going to hear their voices more than you ever have before. The baby boomers began that trend. I'm a proud baby boomer, born in 1950. Boomers were born, but if you're a boomer, if you were born between 1946 and 1964, and we broke the mold. We are a vocal sort, and we value our independence. Take a look at how the aging curve has moved in terms of it reflecting the generations. Back in 2019, baby boomers were the largest segment of the population. That has changed. Millennials are now the largest segment of the population, and they will continue to be so into the future. And on the right side of this slide, you can identify which segment, which generation you reside in. Not only is the population growing older, but the workforce is growing older as well. Take a look at these headlines in the last year. Older workers are growing share of the workforce. It's representing a major shift. The silver lining is that there are more employees over 65 than ever before. And Fortune argues it can mean a great thing for the bottom line. More workers are still clocking in to work after 65. In fact, the trend toward early retirement has finally reversed itself, and older adults are now returning to work in what some of them call encore careers. They're discovering an opportunity to pursue employment or civic engagement or volunteering in areas that they always had hoped to, but never had the opportunity to. These are the folks who pursue encore careers later in life, during what increasingly is an outmoded concept, and that is retirement. Retirement has less and less meaning as older adults are becoming more and more healthy, more mobile, more educated, and staying more active than ever before. We are, when compared to our fellow group of 7 nations around the world, we can expect a movement from 20% to 25% of the workforce to be made up of folks 65 years of age and over, and that will happen by 2031. We're at about 23% now, but that's going to move to 25%. You can say Japan is way ahead of the curve and has been and always will be. They are the oldest of nations on Earth. And by 2031, 38% of Japan's workforce will be comprised of older adults. What are the challenges that face us? First and foremost, we unfortunately continue to be a society that has bias, that discriminates. That's the term used is ageist. They have unrealistic and all too often negative perceptions of older adults, and this is destructive for society and for individuals. Older adults confront ageism day in and day out, both in the workforce, in their personal lives. That is not an easy fix. It's not an easy fix. A second public health epidemic, I would argue, and the Surgeon General of the United States agrees with me, and that is older adults are more socially isolated than ever before. Not only socially isolated, but lonely. And it didn't begin when COVID-19 struck the globe. It was happening before then. Some 1/4 to 1/3 of older adults indicate that they feel isolated and or lonely on any given day. That's a significant number of individuals, and it's very concerning because social isolation can be lethal. It is the equivalent, it's argued, the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes a day. That's how much harm it can do to both your physical health and your mental health. It is correlated with chronic diseases of a variety. It is especially hard hitting for certain segments of the older adult population. People who are isolated see their healthcare professionals less often. They utilize emergency rooms less frequently. They even suffer from more severe common colds. These challenges are especially severe in rural towns and small communities. I've been living in the state of Maine for the last 24 years. We are the most rural state in the nation. And I know from experience and from observation that rural towns and the scarcity of services and the lack of transportation and also the fierce upper lip mentality, that stoicism that rural older adults have traditionally displayed continues to be evidenced. Certain subgroups of older adults are at greater risk of low quality of life, and that should not come as a surprise to you. Those with comorbid conditions, with multiple chronic diseases have lower quality of life, but also those who enjoy less economic stability. They have less money to purchase nutritionally sound food. They cannot enjoy so many of the values, the opportunities that older adults should have the opportunity to appreciate later in life. Gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender older adults also unfortunately enjoy lesser quality of life and have greater challenges facing them. For all the individuals I've talked about, what happens too little and too late is planning for the future, planning for their old age. That remains a challenge that is society-wide. And one of the takeaways, as I'll tell you in a few minutes, is that folks cannot start planning for their later lives too soon. And I'm not only talking financially, but I'm talking socially. I'm talking in terms of where they want to live, and what kind of housing they wish to have, what kind of social lives they wish to have. I, for one, could not encourage more that we all have a productive aging mentality. It's long overdue. It's all about supporting a productive, diverse, and engaged aging mentality that encourages access and benefiting all the services and resources available in the community. But remember, however you choose to do that, it needs to be personally determined. There's no magic formula on how to stay engaged and live a satisfying life. Remember also, everyone is special. They've acquired over their lived experiences great skills. They've been proven to be resilient. They have survived a number of setbacks, and they deserve to be recognized for that. But realize also, by doing that, they bring a skill set that should be taken advantage of, not only for those who continue to work, but those who volunteer, those who serve as caregivers in their families, and those who support their communities by giving back. What are the key trends? I've mentioned that older adults are working longer. I realize also that it's not gloom and doom in terms of the strain they put on our financial health. Older adults have the lion's share of disposable income. They outspend any other age group in terms of the purchase of goods and services. In many respects, they keep the economy rolling forward. And they did that, and they actually dampened the negative impacts of COVID-19 in the last 3-4 years. They continued to spend. They continued to contribute to the economy. Most, if you ask them, will tell you their health is good to excellent. Know that the rate of disability among older adults is on the decline. 80 to 90% of older adults today, 65 and over, live independently. They live on their own, in their own homes, without supports and assistance from specialized health and human service providers. And they're utilizing technology at unprecedented rates. Their favorite online media platforms are Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. They're the fastest growing users of Facebook. I don't know what I'd do without my smartphone, and most of my colleagues feel the same. As long as they have access to consistent broadband, they're likely to jump on the bandwagon of using the technology that can make their lives better. All of us, as we grow older, have these 7 universal human needs. Yes, we need compensation for the purchase of goods and services, but we also need to support we need to have access to activities and tasks and functions that provide us with identity, structure, a role and a function in the world we live in. We need something to regulate our lives, give us meaning, and I think perhaps most importantly, they need a source for social relationships. They can do this in a variety of ways. They can obtain these important qualities that help regulate and move them forward in their later lives through volunteering, through work, through caring for relatives and family members. It's all good and it's all relevant, and it all contributes to satisfying these universal human needs. So what can you as individuals do to maximize your own health? This is not rocket science, fellow alums. Get the medical and psychiatric help if you need it, when you need it. Practice good health behaviors. See those professionals regularly. Stay active and engaged. Employ technology, but in particular, I would argue, employ technology that connects you to others. Too often, technology can be isolating. It has not reduced the level of social isolation that older adults have experienced. It's not had a positive impact on that, unfortunately. And too often, it's because technology can isolate and not connect. Here are the 10 commandments, if you will, of living a long and healthy life, all based on research. And while we no one of us is likely to be able to adhere to every single one of these rules of thumb, I will tell you, as you increase the number of these practices in your personal lives, you will gain years in terms of your lifespan. Don't smoke, you know that. Eat well, meaning mindfully, in moderate portions, with a well-balanced diet. Control your weight. Stay physically and mentally active, both physically and mentally. We know that in both cases, if you do that, you will extend your life, and you will extend the number of years in which you remain active and healthy and engaged. Stay connected to people in the world. I, for one, know I'm not the most social animal around, but I also know it's important that I stay connected. Those interactions keep you engaged, help you avoid bouts of depression, reduce anxiety. It's all good. Drink in moderation. The latest research says used to be 2 drinks for men and 1 drink for women. I'm thinking 1 drink a day for either sex, either gender, is likely the proper formula. Get plenty of sleep, 6 to 8 hours a day. See your doctor regularly and follow their advice. And don't wait until an emergency or a crisis surfaces. Prevention is the name of the game, to avoid having to deal with diseases in their advanced stages, which may represent the point in time when treatment is not going to be particularly effective. Stay calm, stay cool, and stay collected. Anxiety is a killer as well. Anxiety does great harm to your organs, it kills brain cells, brain matter. There's nothing good about it. Stay calm. And finally, don't take unnecessary risks. We all know that it's not a good idea to climb a ladder with flip-flops. We know it's not a good idea to drive a vehicle when on prescription drugs, in particular benzodiazepines. That may do you harm, may reduce your reactions. Watch out for accidental falls. Falls represent perhaps the greatest risk of premature death among older adults. It is serious business, and too many older adults don't recover from a fall. So be aware of that. Stay connected is one of my takeaways for you. You'll decrease heart disease and stroke, the risk of dementia, the risk of premature death, and the risk of depression. And those social connections you maintain will improve the health of your community. Civic engagement is good medicine. All physicians should prescribe it. The most trusted individual in someone's life is our relatives, more so than physicians, more so than pharmacists, which usually rank second and third, which rank first and second among professional contacts. But the first line of defense for you and I is likely to be our social network, our family, our friends, our neighbors. Why? Because they provide us with social support. They influence and help us make decisions. They engage us. They keep us connected. They're a buffer for stress. They tell us about information and resources we're unaware of, and they stimulate the immune system. These are my final takeaways that I'll close with. We're living in an aging world. Discrimination needs to be fought nonstop by all of us. Technology can be used for good or evil. Let's use it for good. Age-friendly environments are where we want to be living in. Let's help us formulate those. And remember, older adults are a powerful force. Our voices will be increasingly heard. I thank you very much and look forward to the Q&A session.
Len, thank you very much, and we'll keep you on screen here for a couple seconds. We'll have your contact info up, and then we'll play with some of the features here on this streaming platform. And so I'll pull the slide down, and one of the fun things that it allows is you can show the comments on Facebook. So somebody was throwing you a shout out a little bit earlier on in your talk. So, hey, Len from Michael Hagelberg, thanks so much for tuning in. And I'll pull up the banner graphic. I didn't want to put this up earlier and cover the great content on the PowerPoint slides, but if anybody has any questions for Len or for the next presenter, go ahead and send those to me by email or on the comment boxes on the respective platforms, and we'll get all of those in. And Len, one of the things that you had a little bit earlier got me thinking when you talked about people who live in smaller communities and the greater sense of isolation, less access to services. It made me think of conversations we have sometimes at home, and we say, well, we've got a fairly long way to go, but we talk about when we retire, where do we want to live? And sometimes I say, I would like to live in a larger city. And I mean, we love living in Binghamton, but maybe the time would come for us to go somewhere bigger. And to the extent that somebody is comfortable going somewhere larger, is that something that you recommend that they do or consider?
It's individually determined. It depends on the extent to which you want to take advantage of the amenities that a large metropolitan area has to offer. We all are different. Some of us want peace and quiet. Others want a vibrant, active lifestyle. Either way, plan for that and think carefully about where you'd be and not let it be an accidental decision.
Sounds good. So we'll just have you hang out backstage, and we'll bring you back in about 15 minutes for the open Q&A session. But thank you so much for the very informative Tier Talk.
You're welcome.
And time now to bring in our next presenter, a member of the class of 2001. Everybody give a warm Binghamton welcome to Deborah Howe. She is joining us from the Boston area, where she is an estate planning attorney for Choate, Hall, and Stewart in Boston. Her practice concentrates on estate and tax planning for high net worth individuals, and she can tell you more about what she does. Deb, thanks so much. Great to have you here on the Tier Talk.
Great to be here, Steve. Thank you so much. And that was an excellent presentation by Len. Len, thank you for that helpful overview. I think sometimes in my role, we lose sight of the importance of what social isolation can mean for people as they age. And I'm here to dive into the legal and financial planning piece that Len touched on. I think to start, contrary to popular belief, estate planning is about more than just death and taxes. And I think the idea that it's just about death and taxes often causes people to shy away from thinking about these more difficult issues for themselves and their loved ones. But to the point that that Len raised in the context of planning for aging, it's important to note that estate planning helps us plan for our own incapacity and the incapacity of those we care about. So in this presentation, I'm hoping to provide you all with a brief overview of estate planning. What are the goals of a well thought out estate plan? What are the key components of an estate plan? And what are the benefits of a well-considered estate plan, both for ourselves and for our descendants and other loved ones? So we can start in here. Okay, so what is estate planning? I'm sure you all have some understanding of estate planning, whether or not you have your own documents in place. Basically, estate plan incorporates preparing core estate planning documents. So we'll jump into a bit of an overview of each of the key core estate planning documents that we recommend everyone has. And one key feature that you're all familiar with, I'm sure, is that an estate plan describes what your wishes are with respect to the distribution of your assets at your death. Above that, a well thought out estate plan devises strategies to help you protect and make gifts of assets both during lifetime and at death, thinking about your overall familial structure and the goals that you have for wealth planning intergenerationally. So what does estate planning include? Basically, we design estate plans to pass property down to future generations at the lowest possible tax and probate costs. So when I say tax, I mean estate and gift taxes and generation skipping transfer taxes. Managing your financial affairs. So this is relevant to lifetime. How do you want your financial affairs managed if you're for any period incapacitated? That would be addressed by a durable power of attorney, and we'll touch a bit on what that document entails. But also after death, how do we want to minimize the time and expense of probate court involvement after we die, so that we can ensure that assets benefit a spouse, descendant as quickly as possible, with very limited, to the extent possible, probate court involvement, which can be extremely expensive and inefficient. So an estate plan that involves a revocable trust, that assures privacy as to the disposition of your assets. And again, we'll touch a bit on that in more detail. Funding children's and grandchildren's educations can be a key component of a well-designed estate plan. Charitable giving, certainly financially advantageous ways and tax efficient ways to make gifts that benefit charities that are important to us. Coordinating investments with retirement plans, retirement accounts. And again, I already touched on this, managing financial affairs. So that can be, with your attorney in fact under a durable power of attorney during lifetime. And it can also be with the named trustees of your revocable trust at your death. Okay, so just an overview again, why is estate planning important? It's proactive planning, and I think this meshes well with Len's important point that we often put off these difficult issues in planning way too long, until it's too late, until, let's say, we don't have capacity to implement our own wishes. So we always recommend that, as soon as an individual has assets, it does not have to be extensive assets. It does not have to be a high net worth individual, but how does that individual want those assets to pass at death? Certainly planning for minor children, the care of minor children, it's crucial that a will includes guardian provisions to keep the probate court out of any sort of appointment of a guardian for a minor. Generally speaking, though, we can materially, reduce taxes at death and in the future with a well-designed estate plan. So this just gives you a sense, without lifetime planning, a high net worth client will owe approximately 40% in the highest tax bracket of federal estate tax at death, plus possible state level estate taxes. So we generally say, you know, think about if you exceed whatever your estate tax exemption amount is, if your assets exceed that number, and we'll get into a little more detail as to what that number is. It's extremely generous right now under federal law, but is likely to be reduced unless Congress acts before 2026. I'll touch on that in a little more detail. So we generally will say, consider your estate being cut by approximately 50% if you exceed the available exemptions at death. There's also a separate federal generation skipping transfer tax, often referred to as the GST tax, and that applies to gifts or bequests essentially to grandchildren and beyond, so 2 generations beyond the donor. We can protect family wealth from creditors by keeping assets in trust. Certainly, if a child, for example, has a substance abuse issue, any other type of creditor concerns, including divorcing spouses or potentially divorcing spouses, keeping those assets in trust can shield the assets from the reach of creditors. And then we can look generations ahead. We can establish long-term dynasty trusts, often referred to as GST trusts, that shelter that portion of the exemption, that allows those assets to continue to be held in trust and not be taxed at each generation's death for estate tax purposes. So that's just a basic overview of some of the goals. Okay, so what happens, what does an estate plan address? While I am living, who will make decisions for me if I can't make them for myself? So to Len's point, as we have a rapidly aging population, we want to be sure that individuals consider very carefully who they wish to name to make medical decisions for them if they're unable to do so for themselves under a healthcare proxy, and under a durable power of attorney or a financial power of attorney, who would be able to make financial decisions on someone's behalf. Those documents are relevant during lifetime. Then upon death, we're generally talking about wills and trusts, revocable trusts specifically. So under a will, as I mentioned, who will take care of my minor children if neither I nor my spouse or the other parent is able to do so? What happens to my assets? And who will take control of my property? So you can see in the green box, an estate plan helps to minimize taxes, as we touched on, so that more property benefits your descendants or charities or other designated beneficiaries. So what are the key components of an estate plan? We already touched on a healthcare proxy, a durable power of attorney. Again, those documents are relevant during lifetime. And then a will and a revocable trust. And an important note is that these documents are fully revocable while you are alive and have full capacity. So I think oftentimes people are afraid, you know, we have a lot of younger adult clients who say, you know, I really don't know who I would want to take care of my minor child if I were unable to do so and my partner was unable. But we really encourage, just put something in place that makes sense now and revisit those documents roughly every 3 to 5 years, or if you have a major life change, a marriage, a birth, a divorce, or a large increase in your net asset value. That's a general rule of thumb. So what happens if we don't have an estate plan in place? Well, the law provides default answers. So while I am living, what happens if I can't make medical or financial decisions? You can see in the right column, a court would appoint a guardian for healthcare decisions or a conservator for financial decisions. And as noted earlier, that can be a very time-consuming process. Upon my death, who will take care of my children? A court would appoint a guardian for your minor children. And that may or may not be someone that you would choose. So that is a key component of an estate plan. Where will my assets go? A court would divide your assets in accordance with applicable state law. So I have an example here in Massachusetts. If you were to die unmarried with no children, all of your assets would go up to your parents. If your parents were not then living, those assets would funnel downward to your parents' descendants, meaning to your siblings in equal shares. So, there can be obviously numerous familial circumstances that make that not desirable. So it's definitely something to keep in mind. Again, let's see. So who will make decisions for me? We touched on this. Healthcare proxy and durable power of attorney are effective during lifetime. Children would be addressed in the will, and a will and revocable trust together can address the disposition of your assets at death. We talked about this. A healthcare proxy allows you to name someone to make medical decisions for you if you're incapacitated. A healthcare proxy can also include living will provisions. Some states allow a separate document, like New York allows for a separate document as a living will. In Massachusetts, those end of life directions need to be included in the healthcare proxy document itself in order to be considered valid. You can also include wishes regarding anatomical gifts. A durable power of attorney, this is the financial document. You can see one example of a benefit with a signed durable power of attorney in hand. Your agent would be able to withdraw money from your bank account to pay bills, write checks on your behalf, make gifts if needed, and also includes provisions for the nomination of a guardian and conservator if ever needed. So again, the goal is just to minimize court involvement and eliminate any delay in having someone be able to make decisions for you. Your will, we talked about what your will addresses. In your will, you would name an executor, now often referred to in most states as a personal representative, who would wind up your affairs, distribute your property, pay any debts. Your will names guardians. It describes who should receive your tangibles, cars, jewelry, etc., household furnishings. And typically in a well-designed estate plan, would pour your assets over. You may have heard of a pour over will. A pour over will directs the balance of your assets other than your tangibles to your revocable trust, which is a private document and stays out of the public record. So what are probate assets? Tangibles, bank accounts, investments owned in your own name, real estate owned in your own name. Documents that are non-probate assets that don't pass via your will are any accounts that pass by beneficiary designation. So retirement accounts, life insurance policies, and also any account that's jointly held passes automatically outside of your estate plan to the joint owner. Types of wills we talked about. A simple will would just dispose of all of your assets in that single document, but that is a public document. A pour over will, the assets pass to your trust, and it protects your privacy, can prevent minors from inheriting property outright, so holding those assets in trust, and can also be a method of minimizing estate and other taxes. So what is a trust? A trust is a mechanism for holding property for the benefit of your designated beneficiary, so spouse, descendants, etc. The donor or the grantor creates the trust, the beneficiaries receive the property, and the trustee has legal responsibility to manage the trust property and make distributions. Revocable trust is fully revocable, as you would guess, during the grantor's lifetime. And an irrevocable trust is irrevocable when it is created. So the grantor does not have the power to revoke or amend, but the trustee generally has some power to make some administrative changes. In the interest of time, I'm going to move through here. Okay, so in thinking about a comprehensive estate plan, you want to consider providing for your family, obviously. We touched on these considerations: reduce taxes and address specific goals and take advantage of opportunities. So planning for unique and more complex assets like closely held business interests, achieve charitable objectives, and retain significant control over your family's wealth. This just illustrates, many of you have likely seen this slide similar to this, but this is a just basic estate plan. It illustrates what happens at death of the first spouse or partner, how the assets flow, typically into various buckets that benefit the surviving spouse during his or her lifetime, but also have some restrictions in terms of how the assets can be distributed to the spouse to ensure that there's tax sheltering. Then at the second spouse's death, the assets can either be held in continued trust for descendants and other designated beneficiaries for creditor protection and other concerns, to utilize generation skipping transfer tax, for example, or those assets can be distributed outright at the surviving spouse's death. There's still benefit from an estate tax perspective and a creditor protection standpoint to holding those assets in trust until the surviving spouse's death. This is just an overview of our current gift and estate and GST tax exemption regime for federal purposes. We have an extremely generous exemption currently for federal purposes. It's a unified exemption. It's currently $13.61 million per individual for 2024. So as we mentioned earlier, only estates that exceed that high threshold are currently subject to estate tax at death. However, unless Congress acts sooner, as of 2026, the exemption amount is scheduled to be reduced by approximately half, so about $7 million each. So that definitely warrants some significant consideration now to using up some of your large exemption amount if you're concerned that estate taxes could be an issue after 2026. So as a final note here, we recommend that clients consider making gifts early and in trust to make use of some portion of that, extremely generous exemption. This is really relevant for people who have very high net worth, given the large exemptions we're talking about. But essentially, the sooner you make a gift, the longer those assets will grow. So if you gift an asset to a trust for for your children and future generations, those assets can grow within that trust, completely free of wealth transfer taxes. So it's a great way to leverage that large exemption. And just to note, there are lots of lifetime gifts that you can consider making that are smaller if you're not interested in making gifts to trusts. Federal law allows each individual to gift up to $18,000 per year to any individual, and you can split that with your spouse. So that's $36,000 free of any lifetime gift tax usage. And you can gift education expenses for education and medical costs directly to the provider, so to the educational institution or to the medical provider, and those gifts also escape gift tax. Also, gifting to 529 plans for children and grandchildren can be an effective use of your various exemptions, as those amounts are not subject to gift taxes. And finally, so under current law, you can give away up to $13.61 million, which is a very large number, gift tax free. Those gifts benefit your family now. They can reduce estate tax liability over time, and they lock in those very generous gift and estate tax exemption amounts. So that's really something to talk with your parents and think about yourselves if you're concerned that your estate will be taxable at death or your parents' estate will be taxable at death. I really recommend you talk to an estate planning attorney who can advise you as to the best way to minimize taxes and make sure that wealth passes on to future generations in a way that really makes great use of these exemption amounts and helps you control how those assets will benefit your children, grandchildren, and future generations.
Deb, thank you so much for a very informative tier talk, and we'll just keep you up on the screen for a few seconds before we bring Len back in, and then we go to the Q&A portion. And there's a lot to cover in a very short amount of time. We could have had probably a whole hour or longer about all this, or a full day seminar. And one thing I really liked is that it answered a couple of questions up front that I think that for a lot of people is really a barrier to getting involved in the process of planning an estate. And the question would be like, well, who needs to do this? And although you work with people who have a tremendous amount of wealth, the answer is everybody needs it.
Everyone needs it. Excellent point, Steve. I can't stress that enough. This is, I wanted to make sure that we touched on the large exemptions and just giving a larger picture. But an estate plan, if just, a healthcare proxy and a durable power of attorney every adult should have in hand, including your adult age children. So we recommend as soon as the child turns 18, those key documents get in place so that the parents have the ability to access medical information and make decisions, financial and medical, for their children if anything should happen and the child is unable to act for him or herself.
And not just who needs it, everyone, but why do I need it? So you think about in any other situation, would you rather make a decision yourself or would you like someone to tell you what it is that you're going to do? So you can decide how the assets get distributed while you're alive and able to make the decision, or you can take your chances, somebody not related to you that doesn't know what's in your mind and your heart, and they may get it right, they may get it wrong, or somewhere in the middle, but it's not going to be probably what you would have wanted if you had the ability to draw it up. So to take advantage of that while you're able to.
Absolutely correct, Steve. I completely agree.
So we'll take some more questions and we'll bring Len back in. It'll be the
Right.
three of us right up until the time comes that we will start to wind things down. And we actually have two questions that have come in by email. They're both for Len. The first one is, are there companies who are creating services or products that serve our aging population? It's kind of broad. I'm not sure what they mean by that, but I guess just jump in anywhere.
You have no idea the extent to which engineers, folks in corporate America are paying attention and thinking about ways in which to produce products and services that meet the needs of older adults. At the Center on Aging at the University of Maine, we are working more and more closely with the College of Business, also with civil engineers, electrical engineers, and other folks who 20 years ago, I would not have even known they existed. Nowadays, those are individuals who are thinking about how to meet the needs of older adults through technology and through products that allow older adults to live more safely, remain mobile, and remain healthy.
And the second question, how do you think we start to get people thinking more about planning for their future beyond estate planning and financial planning? I guess that could be a question for both of you. Touch on both areas.
Yeah, you made a terrific point, Steve, and that is, would you rather be able to do it yourself, or do you want to put that in the hands of folks who will do it for you? When you're of sound mind, when you can think clearly, is the time to think about what you want for your future life and where you want to live it, what you want to live it in, what services you want to be close to, what amenities you want to have available to you. All of that should be considered and planned for in a thorough and comprehensive way so that there are no surprises, or that you minimize the surprises when the time comes that you enter that period of leisure, if you will.
Right. And to Len's point, I would just add that, not just in the context of estate planning, but it's important to really have an open dialogue with family members as they age. What are your wishes? What is your intent with your medical care? Even if it's just the minutia of, we have all of these tangible items. Do you have specific wishes? Which child would you like a painting to go to? We can really benefit from having open dialogue with our family members and those who will be tasked when the time comes of making those decisions. And I think we all, Len made this point excellently in his presentation. We push these decisions off because they can be very unsettling to think about. And we don't want to think about our loved ones aging. And, we don't necessarily want to think about ourselves aging and being incapable of making decisions. But it's such a benefit to have open dialogue along the way. When you have the capacity, you can really help streamline things for your family members in very emotional times.
Well
So
said,
I really recommend that the open dialogue be pursued.
As I was listening to all of this, I got thinking about various times when I would meet with financial planners, and one of the first 5 things they would say after there's always risk and the time value of money is that your ability to make money is your greatest asset that you have. And it sounds like, especially I think of what we had in the opening from Len, that's important, not just because of the ability to make money, but just that sense of having a structure and being able to go somewhere. And a lot of times there's that focus on what age do you want to retire? And so you think of a number, and I think maybe just guessing half the time, say 62, because it sounds good. And so much effort is focused on that. It's like, sometimes I think, what's the rush? Because I like having somewhere to go. And so I get asked, like, how much longer do you want to work? I'm like, what's the urgency to stop working? What will you do otherwise? I think of people that, like, they retire and they stop working, and then, like, within like a month they pass away, and I'm like, how does that happen?
Yeah.
So much to unpack there. I'll stop and let you weigh in on it, but yeah, a lot of
Stephen,
good stuff there.
that happens because the grass is not always greener on the other side of the fence. Uh, and what's crucial is that anyone who's been a workaholic most of their life, like myself, it's critical that they plan for transition, and they think about alternative roles that they can take on, frequently volunteering, or non-core career, or part-time work. Think of what will replace the fact that you spent 40 hours a week or more in the workplace. You need an alternative. You need a substitute for that, what you did for so many years of your life.
Right, because losing a purpose, I imagine, is just a very difficult life change. So whatever that purpose is individualized, but it's important to to really feel like you have meaning, I think, in your life, no matter what that means for you. So that's an excellent point.
I need something other than playing golf every day, because A, I'd like it, but not that much, and B, I'm not even close to good at it. So I need a little more structure other than that. And this question just came in by email. It looks like this would be for Deb. When gifting my children up to $10,000, is there a 5 or 10-year look back period to be concerned about?
No. So the federal gift tax law, we have an annual exclusion amount, which increases for inflation. So for 2024, it's $18,000 per person, per individual can be gifted. And if you have a spouse, you can gift up to $36,000 per person. So no, there is no 5-year look back to be concerned about. That is completely free of gift tax implications.
I guess this next question would also be for you, Deb. Let's just say somebody is in an age set where they're in their like 40s or 50s. They've got parents a generation older. They don't have any idea what is planned as far as their parents' financial assets, and they're hoping to, not get some negative surprises when the time comes that the parents pass away. But it's a difficult conversation, and they have a lot of reluctance in trying to, kind of open the door to get that started. What advice would you have for them to, try to have those conversations? Because you really need to, and the more you know going into it, it's going to make it a lot less unpleasant when the time comes.
That's an excellent question, Stephen. I think many of us struggle with that. Not everyone is completely transparent with their finances, and we certainly, I think, all respect that. I would suggest, I feel like I'm reiterating this multiple times, but what I would suggest is framing the conversation in, what would you like to have happen with your assets? So don't jump in asking, what are your finances? Show me your net worth statement. But rather, let's talk about planning for aging. And let's think about, what are your wishes, your medical wishes, right? You can dial it back and say, let's frame this for a discussion during your lifetime. So what are your wishes for your medical and financial care while you're living, if you're unable to make those decisions for yourself? And then I find that often that can lend itself to a broader discussion about, let's talk about how you would like your assets to flow at your death. What are your visions? What are your familial goals? Would you like assets distributed outright to your grandchildren? Or do you have creditor concerns? Are you worried about, potentially divorcing spouses? And then you can invite a broader conversation, likely with a professional, but at least, make the discussion, I feel like, a bit less intimidating by framing it, you're still alive. Let's do what we can to affect your wishes when you're gone. And so that would be my best advice about how to broach the conversation with people who, you know, have some concerns about discussing private financial issues.
Probably like a lot of other topics where it's all in the approach, and if you do it wrong, it just comes across very confrontational. You say
Right.
like, "What's your net worth?" or "How much debt do you have?" and it's like, "Whoa!" Like
I
I don't
get
want to
it.
get into that.
Not the
Where
way you want to frame the conversation, but yes, that's
it should be a little softer. Like, "Are you doing
that's
okay? Like, can we talk
that's
about it? Not let's get out the balance sheet and take a look where
that's
that's going to just make
right.
somebody kind of roll back a little."
Of course.
Looks like this next question will also be for you, Deb, and I think this is a great question. Should you still set up a trust for your property if you are still paying a mortgage on it? I'm 54. Is it too soon?
Well, so I'm assuming the question is an irrevocable trust gifting the property so that that property is not included in the person's estate at death. I think I need a little more information about that. But if we assume that the idea is maybe I want to take my house, put it in trust, get it out of my taxable estate, and leave it to my kids. That can be a little bit complicated if there is a liability on the property. A lot of times, mortgage companies will push back a bit. Lenders, you know, have some concerns about titling, which can make it a little bit difficult. There's also complexity if the individual will continue to live in the home. Basically, without getting into too much detail, a lease would need to be put into place. The individual living in the home would need to rent the property back from the trust. If that's not done, the government basically views the transfer as, well, you know, you gifted the property away, but you continue to use it as if it was your own. So there are definitely some complexities there. But in terms of timing, there's no right time to do it. You know, I keep raising Len's earlier point, earlier the better for these discussions. But if you, for example, have a vacation home, that's often a very effective way to leverage your gift tax exemption and ensure that the property stays in trust for future generations. So there really are a lot of gifting options. Too detailed for us to delve into here, but I would definitely recommend considering, you know, ways to minimize your taxable estate sooner rather than later.
I thought we might get a subsequent email with a little bit more color on the situation to try to answer the question. But in the absence of that, I was kind of reading it the same way you did and thinking about that it was meant to be a situation where a property is in one person's name only, and they've got to figure out how to, they don't want it to go into probate, and they're trying to avoid that. So,
right. And avoid, if it's, I will just add, Steve, if it's as simple as avoiding probate, then that property can be titled in the name of a revocable trust. If we're not worried about estate tax issues, that can avoid probate. So that's generally very simple to do, but generally you will need the lender's approval if there is an outstanding liability on the property. So that's just really as easy as reaching out to the lender and trying to determine if there are any barriers. But generally speaking, we don't see much with respect to retitling in the name of a revocable trust, because that's essentially treated as you for tax purposes.
Patricia, who had emailed us the question, I hope we answered it to your satisfaction. If not, just shoot me an email.
Right, follow up.
And I'll send it to Deb, and we'll get it answered properly for you. So
Happy to
yeah,
help.
just to make sure we captured the situation accurately, which sometimes over email is not really easy to do. And so at this point, I would like to thank you both for sharing your time with us and your expertise. And we spent a lot of time prepping for this program, and it felt like we said May 16th, and it felt like such a long way away, and it's finally here, and we're pretty much at the end of the program for tonight. And so a lot of thought and care went into it. And so I want to again say thank you to you, Len, and you, Deb, and I know a lot of people appreciate it. I'm getting some comments here. I'm just going to click the tab. Wonderful talks from both. Thank you for this informative session. These are all comments people had sent in through Facebook, so it's pretty evident that the program and the content were well received. So thank you so much, and I know you're all busy people, and so glad we could fit this in and get this done tonight.
It was a true pleasure. Thanks for inviting us, Steve. And Len, I really enjoyed your presentation as well.
Thank you. Likewise, Deb. I need to talk to you very soon about a lot of.
You have my contact info, Len. Reach out anytime. But it's a pleasure, Steve. Thank you, and Dana as well, very much.
Thank you.
Steve, a pleasure.
And that will wrap it up for the spring 2024 Tier Talks. We hope you enjoyed it. This program will be archived and automatically saved on our website and on our Facebook page. So if there's anything that you want to go back and take a look at, I know somebody asked about Len's contact information, so that will be up there. I can probably hit that by email separately anyway to pass that along. So definitely take a look at the content, share it around as needed, and we're going to spend the summer working on putting together some great lifelong learning programs, and they'll be ready to re-roll in the fall with webinars on a monthly basis. And we'll have a Tier Talks in person at homecoming. So make sure that you save the date of September 27th to the 29th and be planning to come back here to Binghamton for what will be a great weekend. The schedule items are coming our way, and we're going to put that up on our website in the next couple of weeks and be ready to take registrations for homecoming by the end of June. So that will be here very, very quickly, I'm sure. So that will wrap it up here for this evening. For Deborah Howe and Lenard Kaye, I'm Steve C. Prasad. Thank you so much for joining us on Tier Talks, and we'll see you on the next webinar program.